start when you're in the throes of working in the building. I am Cindy Wilson. This is my 10th year at Shaftesbury School. I had the pleasure of working alongside these very smart and talented people and a great administration and a great district. So being in the building for 10 years, you start to see trends, and it's no surprise to us that our mental health issues are becoming of concern. And we're seeing it in our youngest populations. We're seeing it in our youngest learners. They're showing up for school and they're not available to learn because of social emotional incompetence or lack of, or self-regulation skills. So we start to question, like, why is this happening? What are we seeing? Where is this coming from? And I know that Maureen and I are in the lower socioeconomic schools, and a lot of those could be lack of preschool experiences, lack of exposure to extracurricular activities where we engage with our kids, just life stressors, trauma. These children are coming into our classrooms, they're not available to learn. They lack the social emotional competence and self-regulation skills. And those two are kind of constructs that kind of overlap and really help create, build you up for academic success. If you're coming into school and you're not available to learn, we could stand on our heads and do flip-flops all day, and they're not getting it. So we're dealing with behaviors that not necessarily organic. These children are not necessarily, have a learning disability or an organic, disability that's preventing them from being available to learn. It's just that they lack some basic self-regulation skills and emotional. So I talk about being able to manage their behavior, their feelings, having a lack of trust for the adults in their life, not being able to form friendships, not knowing how to resolve social conflict. These children are in our classrooms these days, and it creates it's just an, what do I want to say? Jump in. It's a struggle for them, and it's a struggle for the students that are available to learn, and it's a struggle for the teacher in that classroom. And yes, we do want to personalize learning, and we do want to, and we're doing great things with our students. However, I spend a lot of time in kindergarten classrooms, my SBSS, and thank you for putting full-time social behavior support specialists in our schools, because they are so needed, especially in the building that we are at. I could not do the job I do without the support of Dr. Adams and my whole staff in general, but they are a much needed support person in the building. Christy Kane supports Maureen. Jump in, add anything you want to add, but it's really a concern, and I called Kim and we had a conversation, and I said, we have to think about what we can do. Is there a way we can look to pilot some type of program where we can keep the end of the kindergarten standards in place, modify the program, so we're doing our kindergarten curriculum, but we're building in some time for people to come in and support conflict resolution. Bring these kids to a place where they can learn. And I'm not talking about our young learners or our younger students, because they actually are doing fine in our building. So it really it crosses all barriers. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's just the stressors that our youngest students are bringing to the classrooms with them. So I just feel like it's important enough now to look at it and to see what we could do, and if we could pilot it for a year or 2 years, possibly 3, to see what kind of results we get, and just to offer some.
Can I jump in for 1 second? So that's okay, you're on a roll, you're going. It's funny, because we were thinking about what it is you wanted to say, and I said, you just need to talk from our heart, because we, this all kind of came from an organic experience of just observing. As educators, that's what we do. We do, a big part of our day is observing our students, and based on our observations, we gear how it is that we're going to teach and approach that student. And we identify needs, and we identify the skills and the abilities of each of the students, and we identified some needs in some of our youngest learners coming in. And I'm new in Middletown, this is my second year here, but the percentage has been increasing of the number of students that are coming to kindergarten without those basic social skills. And you cannot tap into the academic skills if these students are not able to socially attend. So that's kind of where the brakes were put, and we kind of, and I have to say, just even listening to all the directors and the supervisors, I wish I lived in Middletown because I want my children to be part of this district. We had a need, we expressed a need, everyone powwowed, and here we are. So it's a proposal that we're putting out there to get feedback with the goal of helping some of our neediest and youngest students. Because if you set the foundation for success in kindergarten, they're just odds they'll succeed. So there's a need, there's a real need here, and that's kind of why we all came together with all our different areas of expertise to figure out how to best support them and give them what they need.
So in about a week's time, and I don't want to leave out Mrs. O'Hagan because she was sitting over there, but she was also part of this very smart team, not including myself. I'm taking myself out of that. But this smart team of people who came together because we do have an immediate need in our district. There are numerous students across our 12 elementary schools in our kindergarten programs who are not able to be successful in their current environments for one reason or the other, and many of which already Mrs. McCormick and Mrs. Wilson have attested to. And it's not only compromising their own academic, experience, but the experience of their peers whose academic experiences are being compromised because of the disruptions or the delays in teaching because the teacher is attending to either tantrums or meltdowns or other types of behaviors that students in stress who are 5 years old exhibit because they don't have verbal skills or language skills to say, I need help. They just know to have a meltdown.
Right, and their rigors are being put upon them now,
Yes.
coming in as their first experience often.
So, with that being said, they're referring to a pilot, and what we're looking to do in coordinated efforts with the Department of Special Education, Mr. Dunn has also been involved in these conversations, and Mrs. Timmons, is we have a budgeted position that we have not filled at this point that was reserved for needs that would come up during the course of the year that historically do for special education. In the past, the only tool in the toolbox that a lot of elementary principals used to have when these kindergartners who are really unknown to us when they start school, we can't really predict these types of issues because we don't know these students, as we can predict the IEP needs or special ed department needs of known students, like in the spring when we're looking forward to what type of staff or programs we may need for existing K-11 students, is to utilize this position in a proactive way, not wait for students to be referred, because the only option right now that principals have is refer these students eventually to child study teams or to the Office of Special Education and wait to see if for some reason they are eligible for services, which may or may not even be warranted, because as Mrs. Wilson already indicated, oftentimes these behaviors are masked or they present as a special need issue, an organic issue, when really they're not. They're more social, emotional, or developmental in nature. So we're looking to utilize this position to create a what we're tentatively calling an integrated kindergarten classroom, where we would have a small teacher-to-student ratio, maxed out at about what our current preschools run at, which is about 12 to 15 students is what our thinking is, to put these students in with a teacher who has experience in working with early literacy, early childhood, early mathematics curriculum, because it would be following our traditional kindergarten curriculum. It would not be an additional year for these students. They would still be taught their kindergarten standards, but in a different way. And we would also include the support services of the SBSSs, our social workers, our school psychologists, our reading development teachers, our math specialists, to meet these students' first social emotional needs and behavioral needs so they can be ready to learn, and then also very purposeful small group instruction to introduce skills at an appropriate pace. That does not create an overstress or an overdemand, which oftentimes triggers these behaviors that we're seeing. So with that, I'm going to let Dr. Adams and Mrs. Tepelo kind of take it from there, from the social emotional perspective, and how they, as social behavior support specialists and their colleagues, can support these students.
Sure. Yeah. So after we identified the need, we really dove into the research aspect of the social emotional learning and the necessity that children need to have these self-regulation skills in order to be available to learn. So what we want to do is introduce these skills, help children develop these skills, and then help model those skills within the classroom. Helping to identify when they have conflict in the classroom or something doesn't go the way that they want it to go, how we can support them with working through that problem, the problem solving. Small kids, small problems, big kids, bigger problems. So we want them to have those problem solving toolbox so that as they get older and they face these bigger issues, they can kind of have the tools to use more readily. So we're finding, like, as they come in as younger social emotional readiness skills at the age of 5, when they get into high school, they're still experiencing these academic problems. They have peer rejection issues, social emotional issues, and increased dropout rates. So if we can address this at the beginning level and really, like we said, build that toolbox so that they can address these problems as they become larger, then ideally we'll start to see some of these things disappear. Ideally.
And just to piggy off of what Dr. Adams said, there is a lot of extensive data in this area to show that a lot of these behavioral aggressive type students, that again, it's not because they don't want to be available to learn, it's just they don't have the ability. A lot of them are being rejected by their peers, and it's happening in the earlier school years. Later on, they're at a higher risk for learning deficits, for other difficulties across the span. And there's, like I said, a lot of data to show that if you get in there early and start giving them the resources and the different strategies that they can utilize, that there's a higher success rate for them in the future.
And so now that we've recognized this need, we started to talk about what can we do to address it. And some of the things that we'd like to explore are how can we integrate this education in social and emotional, that type of curriculum, into a curriculum that meets the New Jersey Student Learning Standards for kindergarten, so that we can still hold these kids accountable for where they need to be, yet still prepare them for that social and emotional success. And with that may come a restructuring of their day. We may have to look at the minutes allotment for different content areas and try and work in a little bit more of teacher modeling and those social situations where kids learn how to interact with one another. And then from there, we would take a look at ways that we can monitor the progress, not only of the individual student, but the program as a whole over time.
And kind of finally, just making sure that it's not an organic thing. Maybe the students may not be developmentally delayed, and individualizing a program to meet the individual needs of the students, and hopefully reducing those referrals to the special education department.
So this would not be a special education program. These students would not have IEPs. They would have SMART goal plans developed through the Building Principal, in which this program would be housed, and the INRS team, including the SBSS and the classroom teacher, predominantly in conjunction with the parents. We're hoping that this reduces the amount of phone calls and interruptions that these parents are being placed upon when their student is not able to attend or function appropriately in the classroom, and they become a safety risk to themselves or others, or they've compromised the learning environment to the degree where they have to be removed. We're hoping this can be a positive thing for those families as well. We would also introduce workshops and training for the parents on how to also support their student in developing the skills that 99.9% of our kindergartners are able to come and ready to use in our classrooms in September. And again, the point here is that this is not an additional year. It's not creating another year of school for these students, because they'll still be taught the kindergarten standards. So we're really, what we would be recommending to the board is the appointment of a person to this position, to this budgeted position, and working to identify the students who would be eligible. We will develop a criteria that we would work with all building principals and the SBSSs in each of our elementary schools to identify with parents appropriate students who could needs could be met in this specific program.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
I know you're going to identify the city, but do you have an idea of how many students, while you're putting this together, how many students that you have in mind already?
Yes, we have talked to all of the elementary principals. I would say because this is really coming out of about a week and a half worth of time. This is a fast moving, that's why we're coming here tonight and we're still on the precipice of this pilot. But we did not want to waste time for these students by delaying the launch. But in a quick conversation with principals, we have already easily identified at least 10,
And
possibly 10.
Do we have a space in the
Yes.
school for it?
Yes.
And would we be busing students from all over to that
We would,
program?
but at the school where we're thinking there is space, there is already existing buses that come from across the district.
It's kind of like what we had years ago. We used to have a developmental kindergarten or
A transition kindergarten.
transition
But that was an extra
kindergarten.
year,
Yeah.
for those students. It
Yeah.
delayed their entry into first grade.
You know,
For these
I'm not
students,
saying
yeah.
it's a bad thing.
That's the only difference.
I realize it myself, you know, I have a granddaughter that's 6 years old, and there's a lot of transition things that they go through, and, you know, I think if we can help these kids
Again, it's
now,
proactive
and
idea.
get them ready, so when they're going into first grade, they're, you know, caught up.
I just throw in a question and a statement. Over the summer and over this past year, I think we've been talking a lot about school safety and school security. And on this board and from this audience, actually I see a few people in this audience who have mentioned it, how we need to tie mental health into school safety and security. I commend you for coming up with this because the long-term ramifications of this, if it is successful, could really mean safer schools for all of our kids. So
Yeah.
thank you.
It's been a concern because I've been doing this a long time, like 30-something years. I don't want to say it out loud, but it's proactive, not reactive. I mean, reactive is what they're used to all the time, is that quick reaction and that being punitive, and that doesn't help. That doesn't support that whole mental health piece. So, yeah, we need to do something. We and I can honestly look at my room and say these numbers are growing. I mean, from 1 a year to 2 to 3 to like 4. And I'm hands-on. I am a hands-on administrator. I'm in those rooms. I know those kids, and I am facilitating a lot of that conflict resolution along with Dr. Adams, modeling what that looks like.
But it's very difficult to do in an environment with 24 other students.
Yeah, right.
That's very that's already overstimulating for some of these more needier students. You know, again, 99.9% of our kindergarten students are very successful in our kindergarten programs with the demands that are placed upon them, with the compressed curriculum that has been launched by the state over the last couple of years. But for some, we feel like we're kind of inadvertently leaving them behind and not really addressing these more important issues. So we want to correct that.
Is there a chance that, because we're starting at kindergarten, that we're gonna have a little catch up with first graders or second graders that are in the same situation?
Well, we're hoping to continue to move as quickly as we already have, which is our goal. It's an aggressive one, would be to have this program in place in December, so within the next couple weeks. So we don't think it'll be that much of a delay. Why we're looking at it as really a 2-year pilot, though, is because we won't have a full year worth of data to measure the success for these students. We also look at it as an opportunity to to see the data, how successful the students as they graduate to first grade are in that now setting, in that second year. And is this do we need to tweak this configuration or our plan, or is it showing results that we would intend?
When you group these students together, should they be pretty? What about second grade? Where are they going to go? First grade?
They'll go back to their home school. Yes. Yep.
We really need to nurture that social emotional competence and that self-regulation. They don't have it. They just are lacking in some very basic, which typical kids, and 99% of them come in and have been in good preschool, high quality preschool programs, and they come in with a little bit of an advantage. They know what that sharing, turn-taking, adult directive looks like. These kids appear to be non-compliant, and yet they don't have the skills to comply. And they haven't trusted a lot of adults in their lives. They haven't trusted a lot. And they don't respect. So you need to gain their trust first in building those relationships with them. Oftentimes they're very guarded.
But we've already thought about, I'm sorry, Ms. John, but we've thought about how we already started talking about what that transition back to their home, their neighborhood school would look like, in the form of visitations in the spring, teachers coming over to meet with them, identifying who their teacher would be earlier than usual, so that we can also start to build in that natural relationship building with this teacher they would be with the following year. We've already talked, because we had that same concern. You know, what does that transition look like back?
What's the plan to get parent buy-in?
That's a good question, but I think if it's presented with their child's best interest in mind, seriously, I think that these parents, the ones that we're not, they're already in the process of this. Some of the students that I'm already thinking about and Maureen are in
oftentimes, as a former elementary principal for many, many years, and I've had these similar experiences when I was in that role, oftentimes the parents of these particular types of students are experiencing these same issues at home.
Right.
And so they are not, oftentimes they are familiar, they may not look exactly the same, but we're seeing the behaviors in the classroom, but they're struggling themselves. And they don't know how to reach out, and provide. So they are oftentimes very willing to work with the school to try to support the student, because they know that there will also be incidental benefit in the home with the way that that child interacts with their siblings at home. Because oftentimes once we start talking to these parents, they'll say, oh, I am seeing him hit his student a lot, his sibling a lot at home, or slap him, or tantrum, or break things, or not know how to play and take turns. So
That's why the parent workshops are going to be
Yes.
important too.
Yes.
Follow through.
One more question. Are they going to have, 5-year-olds have the tendency to model the behavior around them?
yes.
Are you going to be working in collaboration with the other kindergarten teachers of Gen Ed kindergarten so they have other behavior to model? Not just the kids in this
You want to talk also
class?
about the buddies, the older students also, as positive peer role models? Yes, and also older students in the school, 4th and 5th graders who can work to be positive role models. You bring up a good point. Oftentimes they will feed off of the behaviors that they observe in others. The point of this program is for the teacher to structure lessons where there's a lot of positive role playing between students that teacher is facilitating. So that they can see what good reaction to you losing a game looks like versus what poor reaction to you losing a game looks like. And the teacher modeling it, and then having students model it.
And I think another piece to that is really building that intrinsic reward system for the kids. Kids are rewarded with this bad behavior by getting parent attention, by getting the game they want, and the parent said, all right, whatever you want, I don't want to fight with you. So now as they start to get rewarded for positive behavior and pro-social behavior, it starts to build that intrinsic reward system, so they're more motivated to do those skills. So even getting that positive support from the adult staff in the room, I think will be huge and a key. But then bringing in those peer buddies and helping them, recognize those pro-social behaviors in their peers, I think will be really important.
The other piece to that is that I would imagine, because we really haven't vetted it totally out, that these students would be integrated into the specials, and so maybe the support of the SESS would have to go into those special period times or recess, where they're all together with their peers, so that again there's follow through on what we've modeled and what we're hoping to see.
Okay, so we're going to be, based upon what I'm experiencing and what I'm reading as positive feedback, reception to this idea, our goal is to put out a posting to start recruiting a high-quality candidate to fill this position and start working with the building principals and the SBSSs to formally identify students and meet with parents to talk about the launch of it.
Any objections from anybody? No? Good luck.
We'll update you.
Come visit. Don't be afraid.
Last couple things from curriculum, just a public service announcement that we are going to be hosting our high school academy and pathway information fair for middle school students and their families earlier than what we did last year with the first year of doing that. We're doing a little bit earlier this year. It will be held on Wednesday, November 28th from 6:30 to 8. November 28th, that's what I have on here. Okay. From 6:30 to 8 o'clock at High School South. Information will be going home from the schools.